If we are asking who is the strongest student in ANHS, the answer wouldn't be far from Ayanokoji or maybe Koenji. However, if we are talking about the actual data owned by the school, the answer is way more interesting and unexpected. For example, let's take a look at Ayanokoji's overall ability data. In the newest update from the third-year website, Ayanokoji has 87 for academic ability, 73 for physical ability, 54 for adaptability, and 70 for social contribution, giving him a total of 71 for overall ability. Ayanokoji often said he doesn't want to stand out, or he just wants to look average, but his overall ability is actually one of the highest in the whole school. Ayanokoji academic ability might have increased significantly after he got a perfect score in Volume 1 third-year arc, putting him on the same level as Yukimura. However, his academic score is still lower than Michan, even though Yukimura always scores higher than her, and Ayanokoji's physical ability is also higher than Akito, even though Ayanokoji isn't involved in any club activity. So, it's safe to assume that not every data from the newest overall ability is worth taking seriously. However, it still gives us a clear picture of how the school assess their students, so let's take a look at it one by one. One question that is frequently asked by the readers is how Ayanokoji overall ability stat will look like if he decides to go all out. If Ayanokoji no longer hold back and take everything seriously, is it possible for him to achieve the same level as Nagumo? And fortunately, the answer is no. No matter how hard Ayanokoji tries, it's already too late for him to achieve A+ in all his stats, just like a lot of Wattpad writers want him to be. He could achieve A+ in academic or physical ability, but adaptability and social contribution are two separate matters. According to Chabashira, adaptability is the capacity to adapt to the world around you, including quick thinking, communication skills, and the size of your social circle. So far, Nagumo is the only one who has ever achieved A+ in adaptability, and both he and Ichinose are the only students who have A+ in social contribution. Back to Ayanokoji, it should be impossible for him to get A+ in adaptability and social contribution. For a higher adaptability score, he needs to have good communication skills and a wide social circle. Not just a simple wide social circle, he also needs to have a good standing inside the group. Simply speaking, he needs to be the leader of his group. Let's take Yukimura as an example. He has 54 in his adaptability, but both Haruka and Akito only score around 40 even though they are in the same group of friends. The reason Yukimura has better adaptability is because of his position as their teacher, and the fact that Yukimura sometimes gave advice to the class. The same could be said for Kei. Even though her social circle is not that wide, she is the leader of her group, so it automatically gave her a high adaptability score. Ayanokoji has 54 in adaptability, which is the same as Yukimura. Ayanokoji's score must have increased ever since he became the leader of his new class, but no matter how hard he tries, his adaptability will never surpass Ichinose. Just becoming a good leader is not enough. He also needs to be active in a lot of social gatherings. The popular students such as Hirata and Kushida will naturally have high adaptability, but I just cannot see Ayanokoji become sociable and cheerful just like them. Speaking of popular students, the newest overall ability updates show us that Ichinose has 75 in her adaptability, which is lower than Kushida with 78. This is definitely a confusing result, because Ichinose is more popular than Kushida, and Ichinose is also the leader of her class. Not to mention, ever since the incident in Volume 5 second year arc, Kushida no longer hang out with her classmates other than Horikita, so the fact that she has higher adaptability must be a mistake by the system. However, if we compare their scores from the previous year, Kushida adaptability score has actually decreased, while Ichinose has increased. Ichinose low adaptability score is most likely caused by the fact that she was attacked by Sakayanagi's class for a few months, resulting in her seclusion by students from Class A, while Kushida could freely make friends with everyone. However, Ichinose clearly has the best social contribution compared to everyone in the school. Social contribution is counted using general attitude during class, attendance, problematic behavior, and contribution to school such as student council work, and Ichinose excels in every specification. She is the only one other than Nagumo who had an A+ in social contribution. However, ever since she left the student council, Ichinose's social contribution has decreased to 94, which should be categorized as A instead of A+. Ichinose is the opposite of Ryuen, who has a very low social contribution score. Despite having high adaptability because of his standing in class, Ryuen has a very low social contribution score thanks to his horrible attitude. He has a lower social contribution score than Koenji, so it's enough to tell us how horrible Ryuen's attitude is. He is infamous for constantly sit on teacher desk and talk rudely to everyone, so it's just normal that Ryuen would have a hard time to fit in society. As for Horikita, despite having no troublesome behavior and also being a student council president, she needs to be satisfied with 84 for her social contribution score. Her score will keep increasing alongside her time as student council president, but it will still be nowhere near Ichinose. At least Horikita could be proud that all of her statistics are higher than Ayanokoji. And now move to the next question. If he is still a student in the school, how Horikita Manabu overall ability will look like? Some of you might believe his stat will rival Nagumo, but that thought is simply just a mere fantasy. Nagumo had both A in academic and physical ability, and A+ in adaptability and social contribution. Nagumo's social life was simply outstanding. Ever since his introduction in Volume 4.5, he was described as an outgoing person with a lot of friends, even from other classes and grades. On the contrary, Manabu is only ever seen hanging out with Tachibana, and even from his monologue in Volume 8, he doesn't really consider anyone as a friend, so it's safe to assume he rarely had fun with his classmates. Manabu's social contribution could probably rival Nagumo, but his adaptability will only be as high as, or slightly better than his sister. So, if we simply look at the data, Nagumo is clearly the best ANHS student that we know. However, I don't think it's fair to compare Nagumo with Ayanokoji and the others from his grade. The reason Nagumo's adaptability could be so high is because he has total control over his generation, and even controls a good number of upperclassmen. Nagumo could gain total control and influence because he had no one who could compete with him. However, Ayanokoji and the others live in the generation of war, where the battle to reach Class A is still not over even in their third year. Each class has a strong leader, so it's impossible to gain control and spread influence to the whole grade. In that kind of environment, it's actually impressive to have more than 70 in adaptability in such a competitive atmosphere, especially with Ryuen and Sakayanagi having total control over their classmates. With that in mind, high score in adaptability is actually the most crucial aspect to determine which students need special attention. Ryuen is the prime example of this, where he has terrible social contribution and just slightly above average academics. Adaptability also measures how much people around you are willing to listen to your word, because no matter how good the other abilities are, they're useless if they are not trusted by their classmates, just like Koenji. However, the other abilities are still important. Ryuen suffered a lot in the special exam that involved academics, and Sakayanagi could only watch from the back at the sports festival, so well-rounded ability is always a bonus. With that criteria, Horikita and Hirata are currently the best students in ANHS, with 77 for their overall ability, but if we prioritize adaptability score, Hirata will be the best student in ANHS, at least by formal data. However, we already saw Hirata's performance as a class leader, and even with all his abilities, he is not suited to be a leader. That's why overall ability data cannot be relied on too much. It's good as a basic, but the real world is just full of unknown variables that cannot be measured. Not to mention there are a few students who are intentionally faking their data. So, even if you have all A in your stats, it's just useless if you never get any chance to use it.